Stressed out and can't relax? Take an Eagle Moon Hemp CBD gummy to unwind. Use code ATHLETIC for 30% off CBD site-wide at eaglemoonhemp.com/shop. They already have the best prices online and in stores. Trust me, you don't want to miss out on these discounts. It's 30% off site-wide at eaglemoonhemp.com/shop. All Eagle Moon Hemp products are vegan, low sugar, use organic practices, and are made from award-winning crop. And just in case you didn't know, CBD is not marijuana. It does not get you high. CBD may help to relieve pain and nausea and may help to reduce seizures, anxiety, and depression. Get 30% off all CBD products site-wide at eaglemoonhemp.com with the promo code ATHLETIC. Their products are pure, proven, lab-tested, and superior to other CBD on the market. And the best part is, they're way less in price. Throw in the discount code, and you're practically getting a product for free. That's eaglemoonhemp.com with the promo code ATHLETIC. Try them out while winning free products. Just go to their Facebook page and leave a review, or follow them on Instagram. A winner is chosen each week and sent a free product. Check them out and let us know how you like them. That's eaglemoonhemp.com with the promo code ATHLETIC. Welcome to the Athletic Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is Sunday, April 10th. Derek Van Riper here with Michael Beller, breaking everything down, taking a look at bats, starting pitchers, relievers, everything you need to know going into tonight's weekly waiver run, or if you play in a league with first come, first serve moves, this show should help you in those situations as well. Today we begin with the bats, Beller, and we'll talk about a player we discussed on last week's show because there's a wider universe of leagues in which he is still available, and that, of course, is Yermin Mercedes. He's still out there in 40% of NFBC online championship leagues. That's a 12-team league. I think it's in part because he's UT only in those leagues, and a lot of teams already have a UT only bat, so you can't really find a way to make him fit in the lineup. But there are some sites, I believe ESPN is among them, where catcher eligibility is something that Mercedes has by default. And that leads us to sort of a different question. Is he doing enough to be considered a top 10 or top 12 catcher in leagues where he has that eligibility?
I think he is, and I think I look at it more even as do I want to take the chance that he can do enough to be a top 10 or top 12 catcher? And I think I want to take that chance. We've seen what his ceiling can be in a 1 week situation. We're talking about a guy who was AL Player of the Week to start the season. We love this White Sox offense, and I really don't think there's any reason to question the playing time whatsoever. I think he's going to be locked in to that DH spot for the most part. He's probably not going to play literally every game, but most every game, I think he's going to be penciled in as Tony La Russa's DH. So you put all that together, I am very comfortable taking a shot on him. Obviously, we talked about him last week as a guy who should be rostered across the board, even for UT-only leagues and 14, 15-teamers. I think even in those shallower 10 or 12-teamers, we can get him as a catcher. This is someone you want to throw in your roster and hope that he is a top 10 catcher because I think he's got the bat and got the lineup to do it.
And I imagine in some of those more competitive leagues, those 12s where he's UT only, he'll get scooped up this week. Again, available about 40% of the online championship leagues. But he's going to play until he stops hitting. And, I'm thinking of a player in your corner of Chicago. You're obviously a Cubs fan. People can see the logo if they're watching us on YouTube. I wondered if the arc for Yermin Mercedes this year could be similar to that of Brian LaHair way back when. Totally different kind of player because Mercedes doesn't strike out nearly as much, but sometimes you can have a player who produces at an exceptionally high level for a half a season before the league can finally make enough adjustments to get that player out consistently. And I think it's harder to do that with a player like Mercedes who puts so many balls in play. But someone was asking, what's the long-term outlook here? Because a lot of times we're talking about the waiver wire. We're saying we're playing for right now. We're solving this week's problems and maybe next week's problems, but we're not really worried about July and August and September. But if you said, when is it going to go wrong for Mercedes? I'd say probably sometime around the second half of the season is where I think things could look a lot different than they do right now. But he's going to play until he gives them a reason not to be in the lineup.
Mm-hmm. And I really don't, like, even if he gives them a reason not to be in the lineup, like, who's really knocking down the door for the White Sox? It's a team that has a ton of top-level talent, but not the deepest team in the league. And I think that he would have to really go in the tank while someone like, Larry Garcia was also tearing the cover off the ball. Like, there are two factors at play that would eventually push Mercedes out of the lineup, and I think both of them are unlikely, let alone, or even just one of them happening is unlikely, let alone both of them happening at the same time.
Let's get to our next bat. If you like to look at leaderboards a little more than a week into the season, you're going to see Tyler Naquin's name atop several of them. 5 homers already, 14 RBIs. It's been a great start for him. A couple injuries in that Cincinnati outfield have opened up a little extra playing time. My question for you is, with Naquin, is there enough here for the Reds to justify scaling back the playing time of Jesse Winker and Nick Senzel by design, or is this just a fast start?
Yeah, that's where you got to really get a little bit concerned about Tyler Naquin, I think. It's just very hard for me to buy that they are going to scale back playing time for either Winker or Senzel by design. Maybe they will do it, but Naquin's going to have to keep hitting not quite this well because, then he would be having a Mike Trout season, but something close to this well for them to want to pull those guys out of the lineup when they're healthy. Can he do it? I think he can. I mean, we talked about this with C. Trent Rosecrans, our Cincinnati Reds beat writer, earlier this week, and this was the sort of player that Naquin was expected to be in Cleveland, finished in the top 3 in Rookie of the Year voting back in his rookie year, and then just never was healthy from that point forward. Now he's got that health on his side, and he's taking advantage of it while some other players on his team don't have the health on their side. But I still think when everyone is healthy, David Bell's going to want to write Jesse Winker and Nick Senzel's name in the lineup every single day. And so that's where things get dicey. I think you go get him right now. He's playing a bunch right now. He's hitting everything in sight right now. And you worry about those problems down the road. As you said, we're solving today's problems. We're solving tomorrow's problems. And Naquin can definitely be a solve for those problems.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the schedule for the upcoming week for the Reds, you do have to temper your bidding a little bit. They will actually see Cleveland, which is pretty interesting. Gets a revenge opportunity nice and early in the season. But if you look at the matchups, it's only one lefty. So, 6 games, 5 righties, not a terrible spot for him. He may get one of those games off now that the rest of the outfield rotation is mostly healthy. I think this is bad news for Shogo Akiyama, though. I think if you were looking at Akiyama as a guy that was going to come in and kind of pick up the spare playing time in the outfield, Naquin has at least staked his claim to that share of the workload. So I like what we're seeing. I think he's always been talented, like you mentioned. The injuries have been a big problem for him. I would not go overboard with my bid, even though this has been a great start for him and the plate skills have looked really good early on, because I just don't see that much long-term playing time. I think he's very much a Band-Aid. The guy that I actually really like in the outfield this week is Tim LeCastro. And with Ketel Marte going to the IL, that leaves LeCastro with a chance to be the regular center fielder, at least until Dalton Varsho gets recalled, and then Varsho moves around between a couple of spots, between catcher and center field, maybe the corner outfield spots as well. But since the Marte injury, we've seen LeCastro lead off each day for the D-backs. So you get a guy atop the lineup and someone who's got plenty of speed. I believe he's now 28 for 28 as a base stealer in the big leagues. Teams can't catch him even though they know that he wants to run. So I'm definitely in on LeCastro, Beller. I think there's a little bit of power. It's like single-digit home runs over a full season, but there could be a difference-making amount of speed, and we've seen him at least hold his own in the batting average category so far as a big league player, a career 258 guy with that 362 OBP. So definitely kind of your typical lighter hitting speedster, but not the lightest of the light hitting speedsters.
And something I'll just add to this with Tim LeCastro, and this is something I was saying about Kevin Biggio as someone who is off Kevin Biggio this draft season, is that the 28 for 28, like I don't see that as someone who's bound for regression. And LeCastro's got a ton of speed, but also you don't go 28 for 28 unless you are a very smart, savvy, skillful base runner and base stealer. This isn't just about outrunning the catcher's throw down to second base. This is a guy who gets very good jumps off of pitchers, who knows how to read pitchers, who knows how to time his jumps well. And that is something that is, I think, just as sustainable as a skill as speed is, even for, a guy at any point in his career. So I love seeing that. I think that when I see 28 for 28, just like when I saw 20 for 20 for Biggio, that doesn't tell me, he's bound to get caught a few times. It tells me this dude knows exactly what he's doing when he takes off on a pitcher, and that makes me want to buy the stolen base upside even more than I already would based on the numbers.
Yeah, he's in the 100th percentile for sprint speed, so it's pretty good. So it's legit speed. It's not just the guy who chooses his spots carefully. It's a guy that's also an absolute burner. So I think that also sort of preserves the playing time where even if he's not necessarily locked in as the leadoff hitter because he's a good defender in center field, that keeps him pretty stable, at least for the time that Marte is out. I think Marte is at least a few weeks away from even being close to getting back in that D-backs lineup. Let's talk about another one of the great early season stories. Akil Baddoo, he's been stuck in the bottom third of the order so far in Detroit, and there's no real reason for him to be stuck there all season. If he hits, he'll move up. There are enough spots where they can shuffle some things around, and they'll prioritize getting him even more plate appearances than they had to this point. We're seeing the lineup on Sunday. He's not in it. It's a start against the lefty. So it's going to hold up where I just don't think we're going to see him get a lot of starts against same-handed pitching. So he's a little bit schedule dependent for more shallow leagues. If you're in a daily moves league, that certainly adds to the appeal. The Tigers do have a 7-game week coming up. That includes a couple starts against lefties. So he should play about 5 games during the upcoming week. Astros and Oakland are the 2 matchups. So what do you make of Akil Baddoo as a guy who, as a Rule 5 pick, hadn't played above high A and actually had that season in 2019 at high A cut short due to Tommy John surgery?
Yeah, 20 years old, though, that season, right? So, I mean, the age is still right for the level. And, 22 years old now here in his first major league season. You look at this Detroit team, you look at the way he started. This guy's got to play basically every day. Like you said, maybe sits more often than not against lefties, but otherwise he's going to be out there for the Tigers. So I think he's another guy who hits this right combination of, playing time, opportunity, underlying skill set. It all feels there to a degree that makes me want to get in on Baddoo, especially with the way he's taken advantage of it. We're only talking about, 17, 20 trips to the plate, but still he's taken advantage. He's done everything he can do so far in the early going to convince his coaching staff that he deserves more playing time. And I think that's enough for us to buy in right now. I feel pretty good about him being someone who I would be very happy with on any of my 14, 15 team leagues.
Yeah, and I think when you watch some of the plate appearances he's taken so far, he has the look of a more seasoned veteran just in terms of the pitches that he's laying off of, and looks like a very confident player to begin his big league career, to say the least, and certainly off to an outstanding start. But I do think you get a little bit of power and some speed right away. Could be an up and down sort of year. The batting average might not be there right away, right? The run production could lag if he stays in the bottom part of the lineup, but he's absolutely in the conversation for 15-team leagues. People started to make moves for him last week. 12s might be a little bit tricky while he's this low in the lineup. We're talking about a Tigers lineup that's going to have a hard time scoring runs, so being stuck at the bottom there is a lot different than being stuck in the bottom in a place, like Los Angeles, if you're in the Dodgers lineup, for example. But out of Naquin, LeCastro, and Baddoo, if you're in a situation where all 3 are available, how would you prioritize them?
I would go LeCastro first if I need speed. If I need anything else, I'd probably go... Gosh, I feel better about Baddoo's playing time than Naquin's. I think Naquin is maybe the better player right now. So if I'm really choosing between those two, if I feel like I can handle the speed already with what I've got, I don't need LeCastro, and obviously Ketel Marte is not going to be out for too long. I think I would just narrowly lean toward Naquin over Baddoo because I just trust the skill set more than Baddoo's playing time. Yeah,
I think I'm LeCastro over Naquin in most circumstances right now, just because with Senzel and Winker both healthy, Naquin's not going to have a ton of playing time at his disposal in the weeks ahead. So that's the thing I'm trying to be mindful of looking ahead next couple of weeks. That Cleveland series is in Cincinnati, so it's not like they pick up the DH for those matchups, so you don't have that benefit. You look ahead to the following week, home against Arizona, road against the Cardinals. So unless there's something that happens on Sunday that opens up more playing time for the upcoming week, I actually prefer LeCastro to Naquin. I think the bids will be smaller on LeCastro too. That's part of the problem. I think people are going to chase the production we've already seen from Tyler Naquin, and instead of going for 5% of your budget, he's going to go for 10 plus, and don't think I want to commit that much budget to a player who really still looks like a productive fourth outfielder to me. Phillip Evans is playing regularly in Pittsburgh right now because Ke'Bryan Hayes is on the IL, and he can play the outfield corners too, so it's not a situation where Evans could completely disappear once Hayes comes back from his injury. Hayes is eligible to return on the 14th, so that'd be Thursday, if I'm counting correctly on the fly. Not necessarily going to be ready then, though, so we'll see what the next couple of days bring in terms of news on him. But with Phillip Evans, we're talking about a guy who's always had pretty good control of the strike zone and hasn't really shown that much power in games, even in the great rabbit ball season of 2019 at AAA. Didn't hit 20 home runs despite the fact that he spent nearly all the season there. I don't know what to make of him. Showing some power here early on, obviously going to play a lot, and compared to someone like Akil Baddoo, Phillip Evans is hitting between 2nd and 5th in this Pirates lineup. A little higher in the order, a little more playing time, and kind of a what could go right sort of guy for a team that will probably just stick with any sort of hot hand that it can find because they are among the teams that will struggle to score runs this year.
Yeah, I think that if he does well, so long as Ke'Bryan Hayes is out, he's going to command some sort of playing time in the outfield. Obviously, Hayes goes right back in there at third base, best player on the team, excellent defender at third base. He gets that spot right back, but pretty much everyone else in this lineup and for Pittsburgh is a TBD sort of player. So if Evans hits well in this opportunity that he has, and he's already got 3 homers and 26 trips to the plate, I do think that he could get himself some more playing time. You love the fact that he is hitting in the top half of the order. I also think that wouldn't change, right? I mean, when Hayes comes back, I think that we would still see Evans as a guy who sticks in the top half of this order if he hits his way there. And, the no 20 homers in that 2019 rabbit ball season, it's a little bit of a disconcerting fact for him, especially since he was in the Cubs system. So we're talking about a guy who was playing in Pacific Coast League parks in that 2019 season. We know how that former AAA league played for offense, but still 17 homers. It's not like he was that far off. We're not talking about a guy who eked his way to 9, 10, 11 homers. Did hit 17 homers in 539 plate appearances that season. I buy the playing time. I mean, I think that he's hit well enough to believe that there's going to be more playing time for him even when Hayes comes back. And that's the name of the game here, especially this early in the season. If I wasn't looking at outfield specifically, I would put him in a group with LeCastro, where I would say LeCastro is my number 1 guy that we've talked about, regardless of position. And then maybe I look at Evans as my second.
Yeah, I think I would go similar with the order, where I definitely have LeCastro over Evans. But the big difference for me, because of the value of speed, LeCastro at why I think I said 5% is kind of my range on him. Evans is probably more of like a 2 to 3% guy. I don't think it's going to take a lot to get him because he's buried. He's just one of those guys. People aren't going to chase him. There's no prospect pedigree there. There's no overwhelming tool, even though he could be one of those guys that does everything well enough to hang around a bit in Pittsburgh. There's an interesting story developing with the Dodgers. Cody Bellinger on the IL right now with a calf injury, so that's opened up a little extra playing time, and the Dodgers were on the road with the benefit of the DH in Oakland earlier this week. Zach McKinstry has been playing a lot, and I think his appeal is limited more to NL only and very deep mixed leagues, but if you're in a daily moves league, a first-come, first-serve situation at the very least, he's the kind of guy that I think you would want to pick up and maybe plug into your lineup a little bit while he's getting this extra run. I know Mookie Betts is also banged up right now, but even once Betts comes back, I think most of this playing time for McKinstry is hinging on the absence of Bellinger. So buried in the lineup, but as I said before, being buried in that Dodgers lineup, no problem at all. And this is a guy that, even though the rabbit ball year in 2019 doesn't tell us a lot about how good a player really is at AAA. If we look at something like WRC Plus, which is a league context overall offensive value stat, and we see a guy who is 77% better than a league average hitter at AAA, we should put a little bit of stock into that. And we saw a little bit of speed at AA prior to that from McKinstry. He's always done a pretty good job putting a lot of balls in play, a little bit patient as a hitter, and can play all over. So one of those glue guys that, as you think about this team, with Kike Hernandez now in Boston, maybe he's sort of their replacement for Kike, where he can step in and be a glue guy on a loaded Dodgers team.
Yeah, you can still never be sure of the playing time for anyone who's not Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, Gavin Lux now, right, as a regular everyday player, and then Bellinger when he's healthy. We're still going to see some rotation with McKinstry. with Chris Taylor, with A.J. Pollock. Those guys are going to move in and out of the lineup even while Bellinger is out. But you could do a whole lot worse than taking a shot on a guy who can play multiple positions in this Dodgers lineup. So definitely, I'm with you on the fact that we're talking deep mixers and NL only. But if you are in a league like that, he's someone who should be at the top of your list this weekend.
The other player I'm watching who's done some damage in the minors is Seth Brown. I think in weekly leagues, he's a bit of a problem because the A's have 6 games, but 3 of them are against lefties. I don't know if he's going to play against those lefties, and even if he does, it's a lefty-lefty matchup for a guy who hasn't spent that much time in the big leagues, so you might not want all of those stats necessarily, but big power in the minors. You think about Mitch Moreland as a guy who's nearing the end of his career, and if they were to part ways with Moreland, suddenly Seth Brown is a first-time regular, at least on the big side of platoon, at age 28. 30 homers at High A in 2017, 37 homers with the aforementioned rabbit ball at AAA in 2019. It was 26% better than league average. So not a guy that's necessarily going to come in and set the world on fire, but a guy who could come in and provide 20 to 25 home run pop, maybe near the heart of the Oakland lineup if things fall his way.
Yeah, and that last part, though, is why I'm sort of off him, right? It's if things fall his way. Like, things are going to have, a few things I think are going to have to happen before we're really thinking about him as a super attractive fantasy target. And you mentioned we could be talking about a big side platoon player as well. So a few hurdles in his way before I'm really feeling good about going out and claiming Seth Brown.
Yeah, so I'm taking more of a wait-and-see approach, but always good to have a few players on the watch list. I want to get your thoughts on Rougned Odor. Where could he fit with the Yankees? That was one of the 2 trades that went down earlier this week. Orlando Arcia went to Atlanta and got sent to the alternate site, which I don't know why they traded for him, but here we are. They went ahead and did that. Odor, to me, I think when they made the deal, my thought was, oh, they've upgraded Tyler Wade. Like now they have a guy that plays multiple infield spots, left-handed bat. Obviously, Yankee Stadium for lefties. We've talked about that. It's great. But how much does he play with the current build of this roster? I would say, if Tyler Wade sticks around, Jay Bruce's hold on playing time might be slipping away.
Yeah, I think that's really the thing that you take away from this in the fantasy world is that there are more tenuous holds on playing time for non-obvious starting Yankees. That's where I get concerned. This doesn't do anything for me with respect to Rougned Odor's fantasy value. We know exactly what sort of player he is. Going to strike out and strike out and strike out and strike out and run into the occasional homer. And in the Yankees lineup, there might be a tiny bit of value to that because of all the run production and run scoring upside that you get just by virtue of being anywhere in this Yankees lineup. But I really don't see it. We know exactly who Rougned Odor is. I think he could be an upgrade to Tyler Wade. I think he's a nice guy for the Yankees to add to the mix in real life and play a Odor, Wade, Bruce sort of rotation. But I just don't really see it in the fantasy world. He's someone who I have no interest in this weekend.
So I'm going to take a closer look at him in leagues where I've got daily moves and we can possibly shuttle him in and out a little bit. But yeah, I don't think in weekly leagues outside of AL only, I don't think a whole lot has changed in the immediate future. What I am curious to see is, given that we're talking about a Yankees organization that has turned Luke Voit into a valuable middle-of-the-order contributor, one that found Gio Urshela on kind of the waiver scrap heap and turned him into a regular at third base and unlocked a lot of his ability as a hitter. What can they do with someone who's already hit 30 home runs in a season on 3 occasions and has done it, before turning 28? That's pretty amazing when you start to think about it. A lot of big league experience there. We'll see if the Yankees are able to get something more out of Odor here in the weeks ahead. Baseball is back. It's time to dust off your mitt and cleats and be ready for first pitch. Manscaped, the global leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have an exclusive deal for our audience. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code FBIN15 at manscaped.com. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Manscaped are the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming and have forever changed the grooming game with their amazing products. And they're here to help you with above-the-waist grooming, too. Have you heard of their Weed Whacker? This nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology that helps prevent nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate places. Say goodbye to gross nose hairs. The premium Manscaped Weed Whacker uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual-blade system. Speaking of incredible hygiene, Manscaped has formulations to keep you fresh and ready for everything that comes your way all day. April is also Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. Manscaped has partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to bring awareness to testicular cancer, men's health, and early cancer detection. Manscaped is committed to raising awareness for the most common form of cancer in men ages 15 to 35 and giving support for fighters, survivors, and families impacted by testicular cancer as part of their We Save Balls initiative. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code FBN15 at manscaped.com. The Manscaped collection is the ultimate utility man you've been looking for your grooming game. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code FBN15 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code FBN15. Knock your grooming out of the park with Manscaped this season.
Support for this podcast comes from Invent Together. According to studies, less than 13% of all inventors who hold a U.S. patent are women. Black and Hispanic college graduates patent at half the rate of their white counterparts. But we can fix that by increasing participation in innovation and patenting by underrepresented groups. It would quadruple the number of American inventors and increase annual GDP by almost $1 trillion. Invent Together is a coalition of organizations, companies, universities, and concerned citizens committed to ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to invent and patent. Because the more diverse the American patent system gets, the stronger and more successful our nation will become. What can you do to help diverse inventors patent and unleash economic opportunity? Find out at inventtogether.org. Learn more and take action today.
All right, Billy, let's get to the starting pitchers, and I'm always looking for two-start guys to max out volume, looking for favorable streaming opportunities. The two-start group could be worse. The
We've seen worse.
The names here, there's plenty of risk. There's a couple of situations where the matchups are really good and the skills are a little more questionable. But I want to start with a fallen ace, Madison Bumgarner, who has a great first matchup, home against Oakland, and a difficult road matchup at Washington for the second one. It has been really a brutal start to the season for him so far. Mm-hmm. What do you make of Bumgarner at this point? Because I think he's one of those guys where velo was never really his strength. It's kind of one of those things where I look at him and I say, if he could have a late career similar to John Lester, there would still be a decent number of spots where we as fantasy players would want him in our lineups. Even if he's not necessarily a guy that we're just going to set and forget and leave in lineups consistently, maybe there's still something left in the tank here. Do you share my just glimmer of optimism with Bumgarner, even though this combination of matchups plays for me better in like a 15-team league and a 12-team league? I'm kind of borderline about it.
Yeah, 12-teamer, I'm probably staying away. 15-teamer, I could get in. I do share your optimism. I think that we know exactly what type of pitcher he is. As you said, velo was never really the thing that drove him to his ace status and immense real-life and fantasy value earlier, or I guess last decade, not earlier this decade. But I trust him to be the sort of pitcher who figures it out, who figures out a way to be generally effective at this stage of his career. We haven't quite seen that, and I think that he's someone who was maybe hurt by his obvious skill diminishment happening at the same time as the 2020 season, so he didn't really get a full season to work on that, and I think that's what we're seeing this season, is him starting to work on that, coming to grips with who he is as a pitcher right now, and he's someone who I think can make the necessary adjustments to get the most out of what his arsenal is at this stage of his career. For this week, borderline. I wouldn't be putting too much into a bid. I wouldn't be heartbroken if I did put a bid in and someone beat me for him, because I really don't love that start at Washington. But at the very least, he's on my watch list and someone who I think we'll end up talking about multiple times on this show when he is getting a two-start week.
I always think it's funny if you look at the roster rates and usage for the NFBC main event. Madison Bumgarner rostered in 95% of those leagues, started in 12% of those leagues. He had to start at Colorado this week, so understandable that everybody got away. And the first one on opening day at San Diego, that was a completely healthy Padres lineup too. as a lefty trying to face that lineup, I didn't like that matchup for him either. I do think this week is a little bit better overall. So again, in those 15-team leagues where he was on the bench in Colorado, I think a lot of those people are going to go ahead and push him back into their lineups, and rightfully so. But be careful here in more shallow formats because it could still be a pretty bumpy situation with Bumgarner. Two Royals starters lined up for 2 start weeks, both fairly widely available. Danny Duffy and Brady Singer, they have home matchups against the Angels and Blue Jays, 2 teams that you're not really excited to throw pitchers against. No. And I would say lefties especially. So like Duffy, while I trust him more than Brady Singer for now and believe that Singer's the long-term better talent at this stage of their respective careers, they both have a fair amount of risk given these matchups. But 2 at home for most pitchers, if the pitcher's rosterable in that format, it's really difficult to pass on 2 home starts.
I hear you, but man, like I don't want to challenge either of these teams, and it doesn't seem like Toronto's going to get George Springer back at the end of this week. It sounds like this is still a couple of weeks away after the calf strain, but man, like imagine you also get George Springer back in that Toronto lineup the way that they are swinging the bats right now. Angels are also doing what a lot of us thought they could do, putting themselves at the top of the AL West, hitting really, really well, especially in the top half of that order. Like I just really don't want to mess with either of these guys, I don't think, going up against these 2 teams. Like you could, if you flipped out one of them and we were talking about a plus matchup or even a neutral matchup in one of their matchups, and then you got to face you had to face the Angels or the Blue Jays in the other one, I could get on board, especially with the 2 home start logic. But man, I just can't do a DVR. I understand where you're going for, but I think I'm staying away from these 2 guys this weekend. I just don't want to face either of these offenses, especially both of these offenses.
I will say, while I'm not necessarily clamoring to use Singer this week, given these matchups, the fastball velocity up so far this season, about 1.5 miles per hour. The changeup usage also up. So this is a guy who was really a 2-pitch guy last season, going fastball slider, working that changeup in a bit more. I do think we're going to have some stretches this year where Brady Singer ends up being at least a useful streamer, if not someone who actually sticks on rosters. But this is going to be a very good test for him. I think the 2-start pitcher that I'm actually most excited about of the ones we've talked about so far is Dean Kramer. Home against Seattle, road against Texas. Better stuff than people might think, but these are just great matchups. I mean, yeah, Camden Yards, you're not always excited to throw anybody in there, but Seattle's lineup doesn't scare me at all. I mean, we could get to a point in a few weeks once they bring more young players up and once Kyle Lewis is healthy where in a spot like that, you wouldn't be necessarily picking on them. But that's a lineup to pick on right now. So Dean Kramer, for me, out of these first 4 pitchers, is actually at the top of my list.
I'm with you. And I think that there's also, just because of the fact that he's got some youth on his side, he's got a little bit of an unknown quality to him, that maybe he's got the most long-term upside too. He's someone who maybe is sticking around your roster beyond this week, especially if he takes full advantage of 2 matchups that we're pretty excited about in getting the Seattle and Texas teams against him. I feel pretty good about him. And I think, matchup puts him over the top. I'm with you that he would be my top target for a 2-star pitcher among the 4 that we have discussed to this point.
Yeah, mixing 3 pitches pretty well. Still kind of finding that changeup, but definitely a guy that I don't think people are that excited about in general, who you should be excited about for this week. And if you do look further down the road, this is something anytime I pick up a 2-star pitcher, I am looking at the following week's schedule because that sort of guides the bidding. Am I bidding like I'm going with a pitch and ditch guy, or am I bidding a little extra because I think there could be some long-term appeal? Home against Oakland is the start after this week for Dean Kramer. So I would say that also adds to the appeal because I'm not scared of that A's lineup at all at this point. Dane Dunning gets 2 at Tampa Bay, home against Baltimore. I think you could argue Dunning ahead of Kramer pretty easily because there's a higher baseline set of skills that we've seen to this point. At the Rays, not necessarily a place that you love to throw someone, but the Rays strike out. Like, that's their flaw. They have swing and miss in their game. Very similar to the Brewers that way. Yeah, they can hurt you when things are working, but when things are not, you get that bump in Ks, and you could actually come through and actually come out with maybe 2 quality starts from Dane Dunning if the workload is there. I would not be surprised by that. So Dunning over Kramer for me is where I want to go. I know he's the most rostered player that we're talking about here and the one that people are the most aware of, but I think it's for good reason given these matchups.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that Dunning is the guy who leads this list as we look ahead too. But as you said, he's the most rostered guy, and he's the most rostered guy for a reason. And we saw some of those underlying skills with the White Sox a season ago. Had a decent run of strikeout starts with the White Sox, and that's something I think he can carry over. Obviously, not we're not going to be talking about a big strikeout guy, but these matchups could have him being a strikeout per inning guy. In these two starts, you've definitely got an opportunity for a couple of quality starts. Baltimore, there's always going to be some win upside when you're facing that team. So across the board, I think Dane Dunning checks as many boxes as you could ask for from a two-start pitcher that you can realistically pick up off the waiver wire.
And I cannot for the life of me explain why Dane Dunning is throwing his fastball 77% of the time. I do not understand that usage. I do not understand that game plan. It worked for him the first time out, but I wonder how much he'll shake things up in these next couple of turns. That would be the one thing that would give me pause. If they told me ahead of time, oh yeah, we're going to keep throwing the fastball that much, I might come down a little bit, but I'm hoping that they'll make some adjustments these next couple times out. The Braves have a number 5 starter, Huascar Ynoa, who I didn't think was on the radar. I thought it was going to be Bryce Wilson or Kyle Wright or one of the usual suspects getting that opportunity. He turns 23 in May, so he's pretty young. The minor league track record isn't that great, but home against the Marlins, certainly not a bad spot. And then on the road against the Cubs, you need to catch the Cubs on a day where the wind is blowing in. Maybe he holds his own there. We're digging deep. We're talking about 15-team leagues and yes, deeper. Definitely nothing more shallow than that. But is there any interest here, given that he outpitched some guys that were on our radar for a while to win this job?
Yeah, I think we have to take the Braves' expertise at face value here. The fact that they would go with him, it tells us a little bit about what they think of him and what they've seen behind the scenes that we haven't really got to see up close and personal. I think this is still purely a matchup play. You love the matchup with the Marlins, and then the Cubs have been, they've had a couple of decent games, but this has been not a good offense. They've got 8 doubles on the entire season. JD Martinez has 7 this week. The Cubs have 8 as a team on the entire season. They are doing nothing offensively. They're striking out still a decent amount. Like, the Cubs are winning games based on pitching and defense, and their offense, outside of Chris Bryant, really isn't doing much of anything. So I think this is an offense that right now, not only can you attack, but I think you want to attack. Maybe they figure it out eventually. There's still a lot of talent in this Cubs offense, but right now they are not going well as a group. It's a pure matchup play. It's one I'm not super comfortable making, but that's the argument for Ynoa this week.
Yeah, it's a near min bid for a 2-start guy. It's definitely not a guy that you're not spending up to go get him. Mm-hmm. The long-term appeal, very questionable given some of the aforementioned names that could be there taking that job away. One other thing to consider, the Braves actually have 2 off days next week, so they could skip him or not give him any starts at all the following week. So it's very, very temporary appeal if Ynoa's the guy that you're considering bidding on here this week. Aaron Sanchez, who, when the Giants signed him, I was kind of excited about it. I know there was a report that he was throwing in the mid or high 90s at the time. That was not the case. His first time out, he's averaging 90.9 miles per hour on the sinker. He mixed other pitches really well, a lot of curveballs, decent number of changeups. It can work. I just want to see another uptick in velo before I trust him. Home against Cincinnati, I could see it maybe working. I'm trying real hard to talk myself into this, into the kind of in the Ynoa category. Near min bid, maybe you can get away with it. That second start at Miami certainly has a lot more appeal. But what do you do with Aaron Sanchez if he's available?
I'm probably passing. You were just straining your voice to get through making the case for him, trying to talk yourself into a theoretical situation in which you would be claiming him, and I think that says it all. I just hate that. I hate that Cincinnati start, even in San Francisco, with the way that team's going. And they've been hitting everything in sight with not a ton out of Eugenio Suarez, with nothing out of Joey Votto. Like, if one of those two guys gets going alongside everything they're getting out of Naquin and Jonathan India and guys like that, and Mike Moustakas, like, they're going to be just crushing teams. And so I really just don't want to challenge that team. And it's funny, the psychological factor of this, like, if this were flipped, right, and Aaron Sanchez was getting Miami first and Cincinnati second, I actually might feel a little bit better about it, because if you bank a good start against Miami, you're like, all right, I'm sort of playing with house money, like, this is pretty good. But if he gets rocked by Cincinnati first, now you're like, oh my God, I need like 6 shutout with 5 Ks out of him against Miami, or this is going to have been a horrible pickup. And so there's a psychological factor at play here as well. I'm going to stay away from Sanchez this weekend.
I mean, the other encouraging thing, if I want to be the devil on your shoulder trying to talk you into this, is that he didn't walk anybody in that first start. So 5 innings, no walks. Like that's
bugaboo for sure for him.
It's a step forward for Sanchez.
Definitely.
He's where I draw the line. I'm at least considering it, as you can tell by the tone of my voice. But below Sanchez, there are 5 other 2-start pitchers that I put on the rundown. Absolutely no interest in the group, really. I'll run through them real quick. Let me know if I should like any of these guys. You got Chase Anderson at the Mets, home against the Cardinals. Justice Sheffield at the Orioles, home against the Astros. Adbert Alzolay at the Brewers, home against the Braves. And then Trevor Cahill and Chad Kuhl, home against the Padres, sans Tatis, and at Milwaukee, which I want nothing to do with either of those guys with those 2 matchups. But even that, the rest of that group, Chase Anderson kind of can hold his own, but I don't want at the Mets. I think that lineup could destroy him. Sheffield's just too up and down for me. And Alzolay's matchups for a guy that can really hurt himself with walks are too difficult for me too.
Everyone on this list has a absolutely do not pass matchup that makes me want to stay away from them. I will say that Alzolay, in his first start, he got into trouble in the first inning. He had a couple of walks, gave up a home run, and then from that point forward was great. He struck out a ton of dudes. He ended up getting himself under control and still making it through 5 innings in that game. So he's the one guy who I actually think maybe there is some long-term appeal to out of this group. But again, with that matchup against Atlanta, I just want no piece of him this week. And it's not like his long-term appeal is to the extent that I am willing to grab him right now and then not activate him and see what happens in these starts and then have him on my team. So just one matchup for each of these guys that makes them do not grab guys for me this weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Looking for some single start streaming options. Tarek Skubal had a rough go of it against Cleveland on Saturday. I still believe in the talent long term. He's not available in 15-team leagues, and this is even a good number of 12s where he's not available. But in leagues that have first come, first serve moves, where he may have been dropped after that bad start, would you go back to the well and try and use him where available going on the road to Oakland next time out?
I would for sure. And the biggest reason why I would is not just this matchup with Oakland, but as you said, right, not available in 15-teamers, not available in a ton of 12-teamers. There's some long-term value to Tarek Skubal. None of us would be surprised if he ended the season as a top, 40-ish pitcher, right? I mean, he can that's at the high end, but it's doable. And so we're still at a point in the season where I am comfortable taking shots on guys who could give me season-long value. Skubal's one of the few guys who can do that for you basically in any sort of league you're in. So I like this not only as a this-week play, but a long-term play.
And I think if you're looking ahead beyond this matchup against Oakland, home against Pittsburgh is the start after that on the 21st of April. So if you're in a league that allows trading and you can make a small trade to get Skubal right now, going to be hard to do it in keeper and dynasty leagues, but in redraft leagues, especially shallow redraft leagues, you might be able to get them for next to nothing. Get a couple of pretty nice starts coming up on the schedule. So I'm in like you are on Skubal. How about Jake Arrieta? Is it time to let him go if you streamed him for those first 2 turns against the Pirates? He's at Milwaukee for start number 3, and he's lined up to face the Mets back at Wrigley for start number 4 the following week.
I think it probably is time to let him go. The first start was excellent. The second start, he was fine, but he was in and out of trouble that entire second start, a lot of walks, and we know that that's what Arrieta has become since the highs of his first stint with the Cubs. This is the sort of guy who he is. He's not going to work super deep into games. He throws a ton of pitches. He can get into trouble because of the walks. The stuff just isn't quite as sharp as it was in that 2015 to 2017 run that he had. And so I really think he's a streamer. That's the sort of pitcher he is. And there's still plenty of value in him in the right matchups, as we saw against Pittsburgh. But at Milwaukee, just not quite the spot that I want to trust Jake Arrieta. So he's someone who I would be thinking more of as a guy who I am cutting to go get someone who we've talked about rather than someone I'm trying to acquire to start this week.
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid Arrieta myself. So he's an easy cut for me in those mixed leagues where we took those chances on him against the Pirates. Speaking of the Pirates, Brett Anderson will face the Pirates after he faces the Cardinals on Sunday. So The Cardinals start on Sunday as part of a 2-start week that we talked about last weekend. I got burned by the first leg of that. The Cubs got to him. Second time through the order, they knocked him around pretty good. I felt like a genius the first time through the order, though, because, look, the Cubs are fine. You can throw almost anybody against the Cubs unless the wind is blowing out, in which case, don't throw anybody against the Cubs, because if the ball's in the air, it's a home run. You don't want that. But Brett Anderson, low strikeout guy. We've talked about him many times before. I imagine in leagues where he wasn't picked up for a 2-start week, it's so thin that he doesn't strike enough guys out to even be useful in this matchup. But I would use him against the Pirates, even if it's ugly on Sunday against the Cardinals, because I think he can bounce back and turn that into 5 or 6 useful innings for us.
This team has been exactly as advertised, right? We're so used to early in the season looking at standings and seeing like these topsy-turvy standings, and oh my God, the Orioles are in first place, 7 games, fun with early season results. The Pirates are 2-6, and they won on opening day. They lost 6 straight games, and then they won again on Saturday. This is a team that is exactly as advertised, and they're without their best player in Brian Hayes. I think you could throw almost any pitcher against the Pirates if you're looking for a cheap, easy shot at ratios and win upside. So I'm with you. I would definitely play Anderson basically no matter what happens against the Cardinals later today.
Yeah, as long as he's healthy, he can go against the Pirates. So if you were disappointed by the 2-start week and you get further disappointed on Sunday, probably want to hold him, run him out there against the Pirates, and hope that he can undo some of the ratios damage with such a great matchup on tap. Nick Pivetta is a guy that I am really not sure what to make of him at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we loved him in the fantasy community a few years ago when he let everybody down. Getting a chance, though, in Boston. Velo's back up, averaging 95 on the fastball. Really just going fastball, slider, curveball right now, and not using the fastball as much as he did earlier in his career. So the game plan makes sense, right? Increase that slider usage. Held his own his first time out, 4 Ks, 4 walks, but he gets the White Sox. So in leagues where he's available, mostly 12s, are you comfortable taking the chance on Pivetta in that matchup?
Absolutely not. just no way. No way. I mean, we know what Nick Pivetta is at this stage of his career. We've seen it time and time again. I like that he's going back to the drawing board. I like that he's mixing things up and that he's changing his pitch mix and changing his repertoire. I think that, shows a thoughtful pitcher who realizes that what looked like was going to be the foundation for prolonged success was not the foundation for prolonged success. So I like that willingness to experiment and tweak. But, this right here, I think, is the cops coming to arrest you for even bringing this up, DVR. It's just, it's a very, very tough matchup going up against that White Sox team, and one in which, he could get into a ton of trouble. We're not just talking a tough matchup where he, grunts his way through 5 innings and gives up 3 runs. That could be a 1 1/3, 7-run sort of outing against that lineup. So I'm staying away.
It really could be a disaster. There were 2 other names on the starting pitcher grid. By the way, shout out to our friends at RotoWire for doing a great job with the projected starters grid throughout the season. It makes it so easy to find 2-start pitchers and find streaming opportunities. But Cole Irvin, who was great this spring and has not been great since the season started, he gets Detroit at home, kind of maybe his last-ditch effort to hold that spot. I mean, you do have the concern that the A's could just go another direction if they wanted to, but A.J. Puck's on the IL right now, so their depth is already taking a hit with Puck down. I'm sort of tempted in really deep leagues to throw a min bid in on Irvin just because I do not respect the Tigers lineup at all.
I think that's exactly, you nailed it. Min bid, deep leagues. There is some upside to Irvin remaining in the rotation, and this is a very good matchup. And that's exactly what you're looking for in deep leagues, right? There's a lot of value to churning the roster spot and getting a guy for one good start, or maybe we get lucky with Cole Irvin and he gives you a couple of good starts. But these are the guys who you're looking for in that type of league. So if that describes the league you're in, I think a min bid on Cole Irvin's absolutely appropriate later today.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, Daniel Castano could get a start for the Marlins against the Giants this week. And I think if you look back at his numbers, he was up at Double-A in 2019, 73 Ks against 16 walks, only 2 homers allowed in 86 innings, pitched to a 3.35 ERA and a 1.14 whip. The ratio has been pretty good for him really since low A. I don't think the stuff is necessarily great, but home against the below average lineup, if that start materializes, if you're thinking about Cole Irvin, you should think about Castano, and I might even say that I would take the chance sight unseen on Castano over Irvin at this point, hoping to catch lightning in a bottle for that one turn.
I think I would too, and it goes back to the thing you said about that the ratios have basically always been good. We know the ceiling isn't super high, but you see a guy have consistently good ratios, you're gonna feel pretty good about him just being a pitcher, a guy who understands how to get outs. He's always shown a way to be able to get outs at every single level along the way. I think there's a foundation there that I trust against a lineup like San Francisco's.
Got a note here from Forrest, who's watching us on YouTube. Willie Castro has a top 10 exit velo so far this season. He's interesting. The rest are bums. He may be okay. I do like Willie Castro. I mean, they have a few interesting young players. Castro is among them, but they're still a lineup that overall, the way they're constructed right now, should be below average and should be a pretty soft streaming target. You get to Isaac Paredes maybe coming up at some point. That would certainly help. I don't think we're going to see Riley Green. So yeah, they seem like they're another year away from at least pushing themselves into that sort of average lineup kind of range. But definitely keep looking for value among that group of hitters because opportunity is certainly there.
This episode is brought to you by HP Instant Ink. No one is reading your mind, but HP Instant Ink knows when your printer is running low and sends you new cartridges, so you never have to think about ink. Save up to 50%. You'll pay less than $5 a month for ink and never run out again. Find out if your printer is eligible and enroll today at hpinstantink.com. Conditions apply. For details, visit hp.com/instantink Spotify.
All right. Let's get to the closer situation this week. Yimi Garcia getting the opportunity in Miami. Anthony Bass out, Garcia in. Major home run issues for Garcia at the end of his time in Los Angeles. He did make that problem go away in the shortened season, but it was not a large volume of innings. Looking at some of the options that we've had the last couple of weeks for saves, Garcia looks a little better on paper to me, even with that flaw.
Agree with you completely, and the thing that I love about him is that he's really going to have the chance to run with this job. Bass, done. Dylan Floro could maybe challenge him for this, but it's going to take Yimi's failures to give Dylan Floro an opportunity. Maybe they end up sharing it in some way, but I don't know. Garcia's locked in. That lined up, the save he got on Saturday, it lined up really nicely for Don Mattingly to lay things out with the back end of the bullpen. You got 6 great innings out of Trevor Rogers against the Mets to start that game. Then you saw Floro come in the 7th and just lined up perfectly. Garcia got a couple of extra runs, right? The Marlins go out in the top of the 9th and turn